In this video, we are going to discuss the impacts of IFRS 18 to other IFRS accounting standards. When this new standard becomes effective January 1, 2027, we will not only get updates on IFRS 18 itself, but some other IFRS standards will also be changing alongside it. This video is perfect if you are trying to get an overview of IFRS 18 for your exams, for your self-learning, or even for your work. If you are new here, you can help me reach more learners by subscribing to the channel. Let's start. As you may have seen in prior uploads, this is our 5th video about the topic of IFRS 18. And if you haven't seen the earlier episodes or videos yet, we have covered already in 4 videos the general requirements and the exceptions of the new financial performance statement of IFRS 18. We've covered in video number 3 management defined performance measures or MPMs, and also we have dedicated a video about the aggregation and disaggregation rules that are actually new in IFRS 18. And now in this video, we are covering the impact on other IFRS accounting standards, so we are a little bit branching out. This series is all about helping you confidently navigate one of the most significant updates in the IFRS reporting. Today we are looking at how IFRS 18 sends ripple effects across 4 other IFRS accounting standards. We have IAS 8, IAS 7, IAS 33, and IAS 34. These changes are not just editorial, or they are not just minor. They affect disclosure structures and how companies communicate performance. You know that basically, when standards as big as IFRS 18 get released, some other related provisions of other standards also needs to be updated. For example, since IFRS 18 changes the structure of the statement of financial performance or the net income, the structure of the net income, some of these provisions are actually inside IAS 7 on statement of cash flows or IAS 33, earnings per share, because basically earnings per share is the calculation of earnings over the average number of shares. So some of the changes, when IFRS 18 gets released, IAS 1 gets replaced, some of the other standards have to be changed as well. IASB's aim was simple in releasing IFRS 18, to make financial statements more useful. This means that there should be more consistency between standards, better comparability between companies and industries, and clearer communication for the users of financial reports. Whether you are a preparer, reviewer, or an investor, this is an information that you'll want to understand. This video is broken into 4 major parts, so you can skip through them through the timestamps in the video description. The circles on the right will also guide you on which sections we are going to be discussing. So now let's start with IAS 8. With IFRS 18 coming into effect, IAS 8 has been renamed. So this is one of the bigger changes, I would say. Because before, IAS 8 is named Accounting Policies, Changes in Accounting Estimates, and Errors. And now, they're entirely renaming the standard into Basis of Preparation of Financial Statements. Alongside the renaming, there are actually changes in the contents. But this is something that I would like to present first to let you know that there will be a new name of IAS 8. This reflects a broader role of IAS 8 in setting the foundational principles of how financial statements are prepared, because before it was limited to accounting policies, changes in accounting estimates, and errors, and now there are new contents of IAS 8 that you have to know. What are these new contents? Basically, they have moved some sections of IAS 1, the old standard, to IAS 8. When they created IFRS 18, these 4 things are not anymore in IFRS 18, but they moved it to IAS 8 starting January 1, 2027. So what are the things that were moved? IFRS 18 transferred several key principles from IAS 1 to IAS 8. Fair presentation, IFRS compliance, going concern, accrual basis of accounting, and how to choose and apply accounting policies. These form the core of financial statement preparation. Basically, when IFRS 18 is being developed, the board concluded that some requirements setting out general features of financial statements and some disclosure requirements fit better, rather than putting it in IFRS 18, it fits better in IAS 8, and then they would subsequently rename IAS 8. Now, in practice, since there are new contents of IAS 8, they also changed the objective of the standard. You know, when you're reading the standard, there's like a first paragraph about the objective of the standard. Now they have changed it to this. The objective of the amended standard of IAS 8 is to enhance the relevance and reliability of an entity's financial statements and the comparability of those financial statements over time and with financial statements of other entities, prescribing the basis of financial statements. Basically, that is the end of the section about IAS 8. The changes in theory are not very big. They just had to move from one section to another, and they had to rename IAS 8. But it's really still good to know in case you're referencing these sections previously from the old standard. Now we move on to the statement of cash flows. IAS 7. This is going to be a quick recap because we have already discussed this thoroughly in a separate full-length video, and I link that in the description and also here in this video. If you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend it for a deeper dive on the topic. Under IFRS 18, IAS 7, Statement of Cash Flows, gets some important refinements, which actually affects almost everyone, almost all of the entities, all of the companies. So basically, if you are using the indirect method of the Statement of Cash Flows, as most entities do, you know the indirect method, you start with the P&L, then have some adjustments to the income statement for the non-cash items, non-operating items, so that you can arrive at the operating cash flows. That's the indirect method. Your starting point now is required to be the operating income, because IFRS 18 defined what is the operating income, and it also became one of the new required subtotals of the statement of financial performance. So basically, before we have an option of using profit or loss before income tax or profit or loss after income tax, now there's no more option. Everyone has to use operating income, no matter what industry, no matter what size of the company, etc. So yeah, well, that is one of the biggest changes actually that you have to consider for IAS 7 as an impact of IFRS 18. So basically, this brings consistency with the income statement between the cash flow and the income statement. So the next part that we have, another change in the statement of cash flows, is the narrowing of the options available for classifying certain items, such as the interest and dividends. Previously, companies had choices. So what are these choices? Under IAS 1, the old classification rules, we have 4 items to consider. Interest received, interest paid, dividends received, and dividends paid. Interest received and dividends received, both of this, previously you have an option, whether it's investing or operating activity in the cash flows. And interest paid and dividends paid, you also had options before, financing or operating, financing or operating. Basically, whatever you choose, it should just be applied consistently. However, under IFRS 18, you know that there are now 2 types of companies under IFRS 18, wherein which you present your financial performance. Companies without specified main business activity and companies with specified main business activity. So the business activity, as a quick recap, these are entities that are investing in assets and providing financing to customers. So basically, most of the entities would fall without the main business activity. So if you're a company without specified main business activity, you do not anymore have the option between operating, investing, operating, or financing. Interest received should always be investing. Interest paid should always be financing. Interest received should always be investing. And dividends paid should always be financing. So no options anymore. However, if you're a company with a specified main business activity, your dividends paid, so let's discuss this first, it's still financing. So basically, dividends paid is always financing under IFRS 18. And now, if you are a company with a specified main business activity, you should put single category for all cash flows referencing the P&L classification. For example, if your P&L classification of interest received is in the investing activity in the income statement, your cash flow should also put it in the investing activity. If it's operating, it should be operating activity as well. So there should be alignment. However, the difference here is that in the statement of cash flow, it says single category. So if you have different categories, you have to choose. You have to, all of it should be lumped into either investing or operating. So you can watch the full-length video about how to do it in the separate discussion in the description. So basically, that is the high-level summary of the changes in the statement of cash flows, or IAS 7. We move on to IAS 33, or the earnings per share standard. Basically, IAS 33 allows entities to present additional types of earnings per share. So the biggest update here comes from the connection to MPMs, or management defined performance measures, and the new subtotals that are required by IFRS 18. Basically, IAS 33 now allows, or will allow, starting January 1, 2027, entities to present additional types of earnings per share, because basically before, earnings per share is mainly based on net income over weighted average shares, whether it's basic or diluted. But now you have a freedom of using MPMs or IFRS 18 subtotals like operating income, to compute MPMs. But that is not a general freedom, so it should be based on MPM or an IFRS 18 subtotal. So IFRS 18 brings clarity and control to how entities present additional earnings per share figures, especially when they are not based on the standard net income. If you want some detailed discussions on MPM, so what are these? We have covered these in the previous video, link in the description. It is good to note that these new EPS calculations can only be presented in the notes and not in the face. So in the face are the basic and diluted earnings per share based on net income, the normal standard. But these new ones, MPMs and the IFRS 18 subtotal, they can only be presented in the notes. So they are presented in the notes with proper reconciliations. And if the EPS is based on an MPM, here, the entity has to provide all the MPM disclosures under IFRS 18. So EPS itself is not a management defined performance measure, because an MPM should be a subtotal of in revenue and expenses. But if you are using an MPM as a basis of an earnings per share calculation, then you treat that numerator as well as an MPM with all of the required disclosures. So the general requirement in IAS 33, not much changed, except that you are now allowed to have two new types of EPS. EPS based on MPM and EPS based on the IFRS 18 subtotals. And it is allowed only to be disclosed in the notes with all of the required details, disclosures, and reconciliations, especially if your new EPS is based on an MPM. If it's an IFRS 18 subtotal, you don't have so much other requirements. If it's an MPM, if the numerator is an MPM, then you need to treat it as a normal MPM. You have to put all of the details. So that's it for IAS 33. Now we move on to IAS 34. IAS 34 basically is about interim financial statements. This is going to be short, and it's also related to MPMs, or management defined performance measures. So if there's an MPM in an interim report, it must also disclose how that measure is calculated, including all reconciliations and adjustments in the guidance, using the guidance of relevant paragraphs of IFRS 18. What it says here is that for both interim and annual accounts, MPMs should have full disclosures. There are no exceptions, because in the interim accounts, normally you would have condensed information. You don't have to disclose everything. It's in IAS 34, like what are the different shortcuts, I would say, that you can have. But MPMs do not have the shortcuts, or do not have the condensed versions of disclosures in interim accounts. Both of them require full disclosures. The good news here is that entities don't need to repeat explanations about why an MPM is useful if that has already been disclosed earlier in the same year. So if you already disclosed why an MPM is useful in quarter 1, you don't have to make those same paragraphs in quarter 2. You just have to make the reconciliations, anything new. The focus is giving timely relevant performance insights for the current reporting period covered by that interim account. But if it's an annual report, of course, you have to do everything again, you know. One important detail, just because a subtotal qualifies as an MPM in your annual financial statements here, it's automatically an MPM for your interim report. So you have to really check what is an MPM relevant for that interim period. You don't have to put there an MPM that is relevant only for the annual year, previous, or in the future upcoming annual. These changes bring greater transparency to mid-year reporting. Users can now see how an entity performs across the year, not just at year end. So it's a move towards better comparability and more informed decisions based on consistent metrics. Basically, that is the end of IAS 34. We have discussed 4 types of changes on the IFRS accounting standards. IAS 8, which is now renamed to Basis of Preparation of Financial Statements. IAS 7, Statement of Cash Flows. IAS 33, Earnings per Share. And IAS 34 on Interim Financial Statements. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. I would love to have more engagement. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, and see you on the next video. Bye.